You checked the weather before you got out of bed this morning. Complained about the cold maybe, then cranked the heater and pulled on a jacket you didn't have to make yourself. Now take that same soft, hairless body and drop it 40,000 years into the past. No heater, jacket, or weather app. The temperature is 20 degrees below anything you've ever felt. People didn't just survive that world. They raised children in it, generation after generation. The Ice Age wasn't one long freeze. It was a climate roller coaster that started roughly 115,000 years ago and kept swinging between cold and lethal for tens of thousands of years. Average temperatures sat far below anything we deal with today, with no chemistry, synthetic fabric, and central heating. Just skin, fat, and whatever the land offered that season. Humans weren't even the best equipped animal for the job. Mammoths had 4 inches of fur and a fat layer built for the cold. Arctic foxes had insulation from birth. We had neither. We're a tropical species, dropped into a world that could kill us in about 6 hours. So the interesting question is how a naked, slow-running primate turned into the species that made it through, when so many others, including our closest relatives, eventually didn't. This wasn't limited to one corner of the map either. In 2025, researchers examining a site called Old Park in Canterbury, England, published findings in Nature Ecology and Evolution showing that an earlier human species, Homo heidelbergensis, endured brutal glacial conditions in northern Europe between roughly 712,000 and 621,000 years ago. For decades, the assumption was that early humans retreated south the moment things got harsh and returned once it warmed up. That assumption doesn't hold up. Some groups stayed, right at the edge of what a human body could survive. Shelter came first. Near modern Cherkasy in Ukraine, at a site called Mesorik, archaeologists found circular dwellings built almost entirely from mammoth bones. In 2025, a team led by archaeologist Wei Chu of Leiden University redated the site using small mammal bones from the same layers, and the results were sharper than expected. One structure, built from hundreds of Tuscan bones fitted together, dates to roughly 18,000 years ago and shows signs of use, on and off, for as long as 429 years. That's worth sitting with. This wasn't a random pile of bones a family huddled behind for one bad winter. People kept coming back to it, generation after generation, through the harshest stretch of the Ice Age, that undoes the cartoon image of the lone caveman crouched in a cave. These were builders. Clothing had to follow. For most of human history, staying warm meant draping an animal hide over your shoulders and hoping it held. That works for a few hours, not for a decade of winters. In 2016, researchers digging in Siberia's Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains found a needle carved from bird bone, complete with a threaded eye, dated to around 50,000 years old. Mikhail Shunkov of the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography in Novosibirsk called it the most ancient needle ever found. It didn't belong to us. It belonged to the Denisovans, a separate human species. Once a needle exists, clothing stops being a loose hide and becomes tailored, fitted, wind-sealed. That's the difference between losing body heat all night and actually keeping it. Clothing alone doesn't solve food, though. Winter kills through starvation as easily as cold. At Kezem Cave in Israel, evidence dating back roughly 420,000 years shows people wrapping bone marrow in animal skins and storing it for later, in some cases holding onto bones for up to 9 weeks before cracking them open for the fat inside. That's planning, not luck. A species already thinking in terms of next month, not just tonight. Planning food led to planning the hunt. Later Ice Age groups developed the atlatl, a spear thrower that multiplied the force and range of a throw. Instead of one person taking on a mammoth at close range, groups coordinated, drove herds into ravines and other natural traps, and brought down animals large enough to feed dozens of people for weeks. We've also been wrong about where these strategies could work at all. A team led by archaeologist Francisco Javier Aragoncillo, publishing in Antiquity, surveyed high-altitude regions of the Iberian Peninsula above 1,200 meters, long assumed too harsh for Ice Age habitation. At a site called Cueva Grande, they found flint tools, animal bones, and charcoal dated to the late Magdalenian period, evidence that hunter-gatherers pushed into terrain nobody thought a human could hold on to through even one winter. Shelter, clothing, food storage, coordinated hunting, territory nobody else wanted. Each solved part of the puzzle. Some researchers think a handful of ancient humans took survival somewhere stranger still. At Cima de los Huesos in northern Spain, a 461-year-old site holding the remains of dozens of individuals. Anthropologist Juan Luis Arzuaga of Complutense University of Madrid and researcher Antonis Bartziokis examined the bones for damage tied to chronic seasonal stress. What they found were lesions strikingly similar to those seen in hibernating mammals recovered from the same cave. Their theory, published in L'Anthropologie, suggests these early humans may have slowed their bodies down and slept through the worst of winter, the way a bear does, to survive months with almost no food available. It's a heavily debated idea, and plenty of researchers push back on it. But if even partly true, it changes the picture. These weren't just people who endured the cold, some of them may have shut their bodies down to outlast it. And it belonged to a population in the Neanderthal lineage, the same broader group that tens of thousands of years later couldn't survive a run of sudden extreme cold snaps between roughly 44,000 and 40,000 years ago. All that adaptation, and it still wasn't enough for every branch of the family tree. Inuit and Sami communities today still rely on a version of the same playbook. Layered clothing, high-fat diets, seasonal knowledge passed down for generations. Most of the rest of us outsourced it to a thermostat, but the underlying biology stuck around. Your body still hoards fat when food gets scarce. You still crave heavier meals the second the temperature drops. You still feel the pull to slow down and sleep more in the darker months. Maybe the same instinct that once drove a species to shut down for the season entirely. That's not laziness or a lack of willpower when it hits in autumn. It's an old body running in a very new environment, one that has central heating and a full refrigerator down the hall, and no way to know it. If any of this got under your skin a little, stick around. There's more of this kind of history to come.